Hi, my name is Khadija, and these are all the books that I read in February. Just to start off with some stats, I read 9 books in February. 5 were YA fantasy, 4 of the 5 being one series. 2 were romance, 1 was science fiction, and 1 was adult fantasy. I also read 1 on audiobook, and the rest were all read on my Kobo e-reader, and I got all of them from the library as well. Shout out to Libby. Most of the reads were really great reads. There was like 1 miss, I think. I have my laptop right in front of me, so we're just gonna get into it. The first book that I read in February was You Deserve Each Other by Sarah Hogle. I loved this book from beginning to end. If I was gonna give it a rating, it would be 5 stars. And I finished it and I was like, yeah, I would reread this. It was just so much fun and really revived my faith in second chance romance. The book follows Naomi and Nicholas, who are engaged and set to be married in a few months, but they both kind of hate each other. The reason why neither of them have broken it off is because whoever ends the engagement will have to cover the non-refundable wedding bill for their wedding, and their wedding is set to be like really lavish and expensive, and neither of them want to cover that bill. So instead of like breaking up like normal people, they just try to get the other person to get fed up enough to leave, and then in the process they learn more about each other. Legitimately, this book had me laughing out loud, and I was reading it really late at night. I think I started reading it at like 10:30 or 11, and I just couldn't put it down, so I stayed up really late to finish it. I can't remember exactly what time, but my whole family was sleeping and I was giggling. Like, I had to try to be quiet because it was so funny. Like, I was cracking up. I'm talking like bursting into laughter on multiple occasions, and I can't remember the last time a romance book made me laugh that much. But then on the other side, it also made me cry. By the end, I was like teary, and so I went from laughing, giggling to crying, and I think that's a testament to the author. Also, I forgot to mention that the reason why I picked it up is because I heard that there was a movie coming out, like a movie adaptation coming out for this book, and I saw some other like book creators talk about it and kind of rave about this book, so I figured I would try it out, and I loved it way more than I expected to, and I actually got really lucky and I was able to like thrift it I think the day after I finished it. That was You Deserve Each Other by Sarah Hogle, and it was such a great start to the month. The next book was The Mist. I kind of feel like a hater with this, but I have to speak my truth. If You Deserve Each Other revived my faith in second chance romance, this book did the complete opposite. I really don't have much to say about it, but I'm gonna try. The book is The Vows by Jessica Joyce. I wish I DNF'd it. The best way to describe it is simply bland. This book just gave me absolutely nothing. It was like a nothing burger. This is another second chance romance where 2 exes work together to save their best friend's wedding 5 years after they broke up. When I was trying to reflect on this book, I really struggled to think of what to say about it because, in all honesty, like, the characters and the story were flat. The chemistry was non-existent between the 2 leads, and there were also quite a few lines that kind of had me cringing, and I don't have them with me right now. Like, I don't even know if I highlighted them, but I was like, I'm not really vibing with this. I literally had no reason to root for these characters to get back together or to be invested in their storyline or their relationship. I was just really bored, and I'm actually kind of surprised that I didn't DNF it. I don't know if my reading experience ended up like this because I read this immediately after You Deserve Each Other. I guess I was kind of expecting this to do the same for me because a lot of people really liked it, but unfortunately there was just nothing in it that was compelling me to root for these characters. And if I'm reading a second chance romance, I need to be able to root for these characters, like their backgrounds, their backstory on why they broke it off. It just didn't hit, and I just felt them both to be very like 2-dimensional, like very flat, not a lot of depth to them or their relationship. And yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have to say on this book. But this was probably my least favorite read of February. If you liked it, I am really happy for you, but it was a miss for me. That was The Vows by Jessica Joyce. So that was my second read. And then I think we're done with romance for this month. The next book that I read was The Phoenix King by Aparna Verma, and this is a YA fantasy and also a debut fantasy novel, the first in a trilogy. It's Indian inspired fantasy as well, with like a really unique and really lush and interesting world, and it's set in a kingdom called Ravani. It's about a princess and the heir to the throne, to the kingdom, Elena. The Ravani kingdom is ruled by the Ravens bloodline, who all have the power to command fire, or as they refer to it, it's the eternal fire. And the way I pictured it was kind of like firebending from Avatar: The Last Airbender. That's how I imagined them to be using the fire. Elena is the only Ravens that can't wield the fire, no matter how hard she tries, and her coronation is very fast approaching. And there's also a knight named Yassine who enters the picture, and he is an assassin who has just now claimed loyalty to the Raven's throne and kingdom. My one qualm about this book is that it felt too long, and don't get me wrong, I love a good long book, but there were a lot of chapters in this book or just scenes that felt kind of fillery. Like, I don't know if they needed to be in there. I think it's supposed to be like, not heavy, but like a very world building heavy read, and more on world building and plot than characters. So I understand why it was the length it was, because the first book is what you use to set up the trilogy. So I get that naturally there will be a lot of setup in the first book to tell a 3-book story, but I'm really hoping that the pacing in book 2 is a bit stronger and more refined. So I did really like it enough to continue with the story, and I thought it was very unique. Regarding the characters, I thought Elena was really compelling as a female lead, but the romance with Yassine didn't really impact me. And I think it's because there wasn't enough development or time spent with developing their relationship. Like, I felt similar to how I felt reading The River She Became by Emily Varga, which I talked about in my January video, where you can kind of see the potential of the relationship, but there isn't enough development to really get you to root for their romantic relationship or to believe in them. Like, rather, you can kind of see them as friends. This is a multi-POV book, and I only didn't like one of the POVs, and that POV was Elena's father, who I think his name is Leo. Yeah, Leo. You know that feeling when there's multiple POVs in a book, and there's one POV that you just don't really care about, and every time you get to that POV, you're like kind of sighing because you're not excited to read those chapters. That's how I felt when I was reading Leo's chapters. I felt like we could have maybe gotten 1 or 2 chapters with his POV. I am excited to read the second book. I think it's called The Burning Queen. Yeah, I thought it was really unique. I thought the world building was really detailed, really fleshed out. That was The Phoenix King by Aparna Verma. And then I read the only sci-fi read of February, which was Project Hail Mary by Weir. So as I was editing the video, I realized that I didn't actually describe what Project Hail Mary was about, and I was just yapping and rambling. So I'm just gonna give you a quick summary of the book. I do want to say that I would recommend not reading too much about what this book is about, because I think it is best experienced the less you know about it. And that's because as the character learns more about his situation, you learn it alongside of him. So I'm just going to give a really general quick summary. So the book starts with Ryland, the main character, waking up in this spaceship in the middle of nowhere in space, all alone, and he is the sole survivor on the ship. He doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know his name. He doesn't know what his life was before. He doesn't know what the mission is, how to complete the mission. The book starts with him being a completely blank slate. So as he's starting to regain his memories, you start to put all the pieces together and start to figure out the situation and figure out the story and what's actually happening and what he's dealing with as he's figuring it out. It's also one of those stories where humanity is doomed if this mission isn't completed, so that's what he's facing. That's kind of all I want to say about the plot, because again, I do think this is best experience knowing as little as possible. Yeah. I read this book to challenge myself because I couldn't remember the last time I read a science fiction book. And that is kind of intentional. I don't really like to read sci-fi, or at least it's just not my preferred genre. But one of my goals this year was to step out of my comfort zone at least once a month with a book. And last month I didn't really step out of my comfort zone. I think they were all fantasy. So this month I was like, you need to pick a book that you wouldn't read on an average day. And I heard a lot of people talk about Project Hail Mary. Like, everyone is talking about this book because the movie is coming out. I think by the time this video comes out, the movie might be out. So a lot of people that I follow are raving about it. I heard really, really good things about this book, especially the audiobook, so I did listen to it on audiobook. This was my only audiobook read of the month as well. So I thought that the science in this book was super accessible. It did still make me feel like, I was like, maybe I'm not as smart as I think it was, because I kind of had to go back and like re-listen to certain parts. But that being said, it was very accessible. Like, I think that the science was presented in a way where it was easy to understand. I really appreciated that as someone who doesn't typically read science fiction. I get why it's so popular. I really do. It didn't impact me that much when I was reading. I think it took me about 2 weeks to finish it. I think that the storytelling was really good. The narration in the audiobook, like, I get why people are recommending the audiobook because the narrator did a really amazing job at trying to like immerse you into the story. I think it will be a fantastic movie. I will say that. Like, if I was gonna give it a rating, it would probably be around 3 stars. So it didn't wow me, but I also didn't really expect it to. So yeah, I mean, it was a fun read. It was an interesting read. That was Project Hail Mary by Weir. And then we move into Aicha by Soraya Bouazzaoui. I received an e-arc of Aicha, so this was the only arc that I read in February, which is a debut fantasy and historical fiction novel. It was really devastating. This book does center on Muslim characters, and I really felt like there was a lot of care put into, like, the culture was so rich in this book. The way that the book kind of weaved in like culture and religion, it was just gorgeous and so lush, so beautifully written, and you could tell there was so much care put into it. It's inspired by the Moroccan myth of Aicha, who was a succubus who led men into madness and death. It's a female rage story with a rich, carefully crafted world that's immersed in Moroccan mythology and culture, and set during when parts of Morocco were under Portuguese occupation. And our main character, Aicha, who is the daughter of a freedom fighter, has witnessed the mass oppression of her people ever since she was a little girl. And she has this really intense rage and anger inside of her that she doesn't know how to control, doesn't know what to do with. And there is something simmering in her that she's terrified of, like something she doesn't know how to explain that is begging to be unleashed on her oppressors. This is a story about living under occupation and resisting colonization even when it feels hopeless. When I finished it, I had to sit in silence for a bit because it kind of wrecked me. The entire time while I was reading, all I could think about was the colonial horrors that are being inflicted on people globally, particularly in West Asia right now and Africa, and how we just allow it to happen. I mean, my own country is currently being invaded by an occupying force at this very moment. So all I could think about was how it applies to our current world, and it was really hard to read. But that being said, I do think it was a really necessary read and a really powerful read. Descriptions and the events in this book, especially near the end of the book, like the last quarter, the last half, were very gruesome and difficult to read. So I would definitely read the trigger warnings if you are interested in this and you want to pick it up. It was just very reflective of the times we're currently living in, and a really, really strong example of female rage. And I find that when a book is described as female rage, it's kind of a very light version of that, but this book is female rage. Like, it is exactly how I would describe female rage. So really, really powerful and necessary read, and I'm really glad that I read it. That was Aicha. So as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I read 4 books in the same series. So I read like a whole series this month, and that series was The Raven Cycle. I don't know where to begin with this. I think I'm going to start with like a little bit of history. So me and the Raven Boys have a bit of a history. My local library had this reading challenge contest for kids, and if you read X amount of books during the summer, they would give you 1 free book. And so I picked up The Raven Boys. This was also my Tumblr era, and I remember seeing it everywhere and everyone was talking about it. So I took the copy home, and I vaguely remember starting to read it and disliking it. And I just never gave it another chance. But I was 14, and the thing is, I didn't remember anything about the book. So when I was looking at my library catalog, I was looking at the ones that are automatically available to borrow, and I saw that they had the whole Raven cycle available to borrow immediately. I was like, you know, now that I think about it, I don't remember anything. The only thing that I could remember was that there was a character named Blue and that there was a character named Gansey. And I think that might have just been because I see people talk about it. So I went on Goodreads. It said that I did read it, and I think I gave it like 2 stars. Long story short, even though we know this is not a short story, I decided to give it another chance. Let me just read the first book and see how I feel from there. I don't even know how to explain it. Like, I don't even know how to compartmentalize my thoughts on this series. I'm just gonna like read the synopsis. Every year, Blue Sergeant stands next to her clairvoyant mother as the soon-to-be dead walk past. Blue herself never sees them, not until this year, when a boy emerges from the dark and speaks directly to her. His name is Gansey, and Blue soon discovers that he is a rich student at Aglenby, the local private school. Blue has a policy of staying away from Aglenby boys. Known as Raven Boys, they can only mean trouble. But Blue is drawn to Gansey in a way she can't entirely explain. He has it all: family, money, good looks, devoted friends, but he's looking for much more than that. He is on a quest that has encompassed 3 other Raven Boys: Adam, the scholarship student who resents all the privilege around him; Ronan, the fierce soul who ranges from anger to despair; and Noah, the taciturn watcher of the 4, who notices many things but says very little. For as long as she can remember, Blue has been warned that she will cause her true love to die. She never thought that this would be a problem. But now, as her life becomes caught up in the strange and sinister world of the Raven Boys, she's not so sure anymore. So that's a little description of the first book. I read all 4 of the books in a not normal amount of time. I devoured it completely. So that's all to say that I have the complete opposite opinion of my 14-year-old self right now reading this series as a 24-year-old. The best way to describe it is it feels like a very, very long fever dream that feels endless, and you feel so disoriented when you wake up. By Blue, Lily, Lily, Blue, the 3rd book, the plot kind of lost me, and I was kind of exclusively reading it for the characters. Like, the pacing was kind of all over the place. So I got to a point where I wasn't even in it for the plot. Like, I was in it for the characters. They're just such a good example of what found family looks like. They just felt so real and so human. I was like, I could know these boys in real life. And I think that's why the series is so loved, because the characters are just so easy to love. So yeah, I love the characters so dearly, and I thought that the world was very unique, very trippy, very dreamy. A couple of things that happened really confused me. Like, I had to read through them a few times because I was like, what just happened? I don't know if I'm processing this right. I think my favorite of the 4 is the first book. I loved everything about the first book, and I think it set up the series so beautifully. And there was so much foreshadowing that you see throughout the series, which I really appreciated. And if I had to pick the second favorite, it would probably be The Raven King, even though I had issues with the way it wrapped up, because I felt like it was a bit quick and the end felt a bit abrupt and a bit like a cop-out. Middle 2 books, I felt they just didn't have an impact on me that much, like in terms of plot. So I would say the first and the last one were my favorites. So yeah, that was the Raven cycle. Those were all the books that I read in February. I think it was a really good reading month. I'm actually doing really well compared to the beginning of last year. I set my goal to 50, but I think I'm already at like 16. So I'm happy about that. I don't know if I'll make a video for March because of Ramadan, I haven't really read anything in March. I might read a few books, maybe like the last week or the last couple of weeks in March, but I don't know if I'll read enough to be able to make a video, so I might combine like my March and April reads into one. And in terms of what is currently on my radar, in terms of my library holds, I'm probably going to read a stage set for Villains very soon because I think it is available soon in my holds. And I'm so excited for that. It looks like it's right up my alley. I think I will love it based on what everyone has been saying about it, and a lot of booktubers that I follow have said really great things about this book. So I'm super excited for a stage set for Villains. And I think I'm going to dip into the Shadowhunters worlds. Every year I read like a pivotal early 2000s series that I just never read. Last year was Shatter Me, and that was an experience. This year, I think it's going to be the Shadowhunters world because I do want to read the Infernal Devices. So many people have told me that it's something that I would really love. I really want to read it, and I'm not sure if I'll just read it without reading the original trilogy or if I'll like trudge through the original trilogy and then read it. I don't know. But that is on my radar, and I do want to get to it soon. So we'll see if it's in the next reading wrap up. Those are all the books that I read in February and some potential upcoming books that I might be reading. Let me know what your February looked like. If you have any recommendations for me, also let me know. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are in the world. Bye bye.